Warpcast is completely down.
On web and mobile, actually. Uh-oh, that's not going to work.
Here we go. We actually kicked it off with the Merkle Bloomberg funding article because it was definitely a little bit of a leak because it came out as soon as we were hopping on the podcast. So definitely tune into that. Then we jumped over to cast actions, which led us, actually, did we go into cast actions or did we do Nook and Buoy first? We talked about other clients.
Nook and Buoy.
We talked about Nook and Buoy, other clients. Then we jumped into cast actions and then closed it up with a little meme coin commentary on mostly degen and higher. So
yes,
there we go. I want to read this article though, really badly.
It's paywalled.
I know it's paywalled.
Is this a Cabal group chat?
Cabal? Yes, it is fully Cabal. I can read the beginning. A developer of software for decentralized social media networks founded by two former Coinbase Global Inc. executives is close to completing a funding round valuing it at $1 billion. People with knowledge of the matter say.
People with knowledge of the matter say.
I'm also like, this is the dumbest Bloomberg article in the world because Dan literally just casted last week that they were closing a funding round. I was like,
but it mentions Paradigm, right? And it mentions $1 billion valuation. So that's probably leaked.
Someone leaked it. Well, so I wonder who the leaker is.
I mean, let's be honest. It wasn't the best kept secret, right?
No. That's the beauty of a decentralized social network is that it is social network by nature. So what do you think people are going to do?
Yeah. I would be lying if I said I wasn't aware of some of the things that were in this article beforehand. Just going to say that.
I will just say, running FarCon, it was really easy to connect the dots and put the pieces together based on who wanted to be involved with FarCon and when. Yeah. Right. So, here we go. Zach Terrell, shout out for giving me the article right away. Here are some new details. LA based, let's go LA. Dan Romero, a former VP, confirmed that the startup is raising money in a social media post on March 29th. You know what? Bloomberg should have wrote in a Warpcast cast. I hate when they're not true. Has two main products, the Farcaster protocol and Warpcast, an app built on top of Farcaster, which closely resembles X, the social media platform formerly known as Twitter. Misses it again. It is not just X. It's also very Reddit-like. Let's see. We were going to be talking about this. It just so happened that the article was released literally as we were hopping on. Yeah. That's pretty much the announcement, actually. Then it says the number of daily active users jumped to over 50K in early February from less than 10K the month before. No mention of... No. Oh, here we go. There's a mention of frames. That's cool. To run polls, play chess, even mint NFTs. Okay. We're getting there. Wow. Right. RIP my inbox because I kind of asked. I was like, oh, okay. Like, when do we think the announcement's going to come? And, a little birdie told me like April. I was like, okay, I at least have like a couple days to fix the FarCon website.
Uh-oh.
But RIP my inbox. Darn. Wow. Okay, well,
so we should basically talk about the implications of this. So high level, they raised, I don't know, it's got to be tens, probably more like hundreds of millions in order to get $1 billion valuation. Like they'd already raised a lot of money, I think, before. So now they have this enormous war chest. They effectively have infinite runway. I think the question is, now what? What's going to happen as a result? Curious to hear, what do you think how do you think this money will be deployed by Merkle?
Maybe this is a hot take, but I think that they're just going to keep doing exactly what they've been doing. I don't know if there will be any meaningful change that comes as a result of it, only because I've trusted their process up until now. I think we all trust and respect their process up until now. And I think they trust their process, and so they might as well continue if it's working. That's my take. I have more thoughts, but I want to hear yours.
I'm sympathetic to that view, but it also like doesn't really make sense to me, because if you didn't need the money, then why would you raise it? Like, you're essentially diluting yourself and employees and past round investors. So I would think you'd want to take the money so that you could use it, for something, to build a DevRel team, to do more aggressive marketing, to have some kind of developer fund. I mean, to whatever, right? There's like all kinds of different ideas that we could speculate for how they might deploy the capital. But I would, it's to say that they're just going to keep doing what they're doing. It's like, I could see that just from what I know about them. Like, they're not, they're extremely disciplined. They're extremely like Dan doesn't go to conferences, like they're very just focused on building, creating value. So I could absolutely see that be something they do. But then I'm just left sort of like wondering, okay, but then why? Why have such a big war chest? Maybe it is to have infinite runway. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's just so that you don't have to actually worry. You can keep building without having to really worry about what's next. But yeah, I don't know. Okay, what other thoughts do you have on this?
It could have been like a strategic round. So if I don't know the initial cap table versus this cap table, but you could see, was this actually like pretty strategic in terms of getting people onto the cap table who aren't already there. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing. Paradigm, if we look at what's the value out of Paradigm launched Frog, kind of that huge frames tooling that is really valuable. And so perhaps there's a lot going on behind the scenes that we don't necessarily know about with regards to Paradigm leading the round. So that's just like one thing I'll think about. The dev community is relatively active right now already. And there is a ton of tooling out there. And so the question then becomes, okay, what would they be doing on the developer side? From a content side, I personally, people are like, you're going to do like creator grants the same way like TikTok and like others are doing. And I'm like, we've done versions of creator grants with degen. Right. And I think it's really hard to get authentic content. So like, I also don't think that's in the cards. And I don't know. I just think that they're incredibly disciplined, and I will be excited to see what they say in their own announcement when they can put it in their own words. I think I was just listening to the recent Moment of Zen podcast, and Dan was like, look, when I did my other announcement, I didn't have to do anything. He was like, I just like wrote a little blog post on my personal website and posted it and casted it, and then media picked it up. And that's how it worked last time. So we'll see. I want to hear what they say in their own words. But other than that, I'm excited for the team. They deserve they kind of like deserve the attention and the excitement. I'll just call it like an endorsement. I'm not saying anyone deserves hundreds of millions of dollars. And in terms of the valuation, I'm not the one valuing the company. But I do think that it is in terms of like, here's a signal that you are doing something right. That is very well deserved.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's hard. I think, you'd be hard pressed to find another company that's working in crypto that's, delivered as much growth as they have, I mean, and, that isn't straight up like an exchange or, like a DeFi protocol. So I think it's extraordinarily impressive. I mean, I'll tell you this, if I could have participated in the round, even at that valuation, I would have tried to. You know what I mean? Like if I had the liquidity, I would have done it. So, it reminds me too of something actually that Mark Andreessen said. So I don't know. He said this a few times in a couple different podcasts, but they were asking him. I think the question was around, what has surprised you about how the internet has grown? So, because he was early internet, built Netscape. He's kind of been around in all these different phases of the web. And one answer that I've heard him give numerous times is he's like, we all knew it was going to be big, but we also underestimated how big. He's like, I still think that's true. I still think people don't really understand like how big everything can be, like how big the global market really is. And if that's your view, $1 billion valuation actually still, like, if you assume that Farcaster does become the kind of default, decentralized social protocol for the world, I mean,
$1 billion is
$1 billion is a deal, like,
yeah.
I mean, I think about that a lot when I think about valuations, and I think about, like for internet companies, it's like you hear these numbers and they sound so obscene, but then when you really start to think about the scale potential, you're like, oh yeah, actually, Visa is a good example. I mean, they're a part of, just the volume, the scale of what they're doing. And it's like, that's crypto is, I think, in many ways kind of a peer, in terms of driving transactions. So yeah, I think it's exciting. I think it's super, super exciting. It also reminds me of something that we talked about in a past episode about Farcaster potentially being kind of the interface layer for crypto. The kind of what the browser was to the web, Farcaster could very well become to Web3, to crypto. So I'm really glad that they have this war chest, because I've seen a couple casts from Dan that, like in the past, he said something a long time ago where he was like, we've got everybody who's like in the Ethereum ecosystem. There is no one else to get, or something like this. He said this like a year and a half ago, or something like that. And I remember people being like, ooh, like, what does that mean? And then he came back and said, I'm excited as ever to keep growing. Everyone was like really excited. The last thing he said too was, if this doesn't work, if we can't scale, it's all just a big science experiment. And I think now that they have this war chest, it's like they can just continue to build, iterate, and, I think maintain the network. So
yeah. It's actually, I was just like, this is like so embarrassing. I can't believe we're recording. I actually got emotional as you were saying that, because I'm also not on the cap table. I'm not invested. Like there's no, like, I don't have any actual ownership at all. And to have been part of this journey, like to feel that you're actually part of the journey by being an early power user, or even by being a power user today, is such a special experience, because Dan and Varun, and you do this as well, are building in public so often. You get to see almost every single criticism, everything that they're thinking about by interacting on Warpcast. You know exactly when they're dealing with feed issues. You know exactly what they're thinking about in terms of cast actions, what's next. You know exactly, kind of like, all of the data is public. And so to be involved actually makes you feel as if you're part of the team in some crazy way. Yeah. And I think that level of collective ownership over the experience, not over the company, but like to feel a collective ownership over this experience. And I feel like this is why I get too passionate about like other people and like Warpcast, is because like I actually care about it so much that I feel like I have a responsibility for it to do well. And for like, I want other people to have the same wonderful experience that I've had, that I almost feel like, wow, like it's so psycho and so crazy and somewhat delusional, but to be like, wow, I am so happy. Like, I feel like I'm part of this announcement in some way, just by way of being able to have a front row seat to watching them build.
Yeah, so. Agreed. I agree. I think that's well said.
Congrats, team. Also, because the entire team is the entire team is like amazing. Like every single person on that team is so incredible. So I'm excited for all of them too, because obviously, if you're part of the team, you're benefiting from this raise as well in a way.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, okay. I remember what I was going to say, actually. So last week, you'd mentioned that you created like an Anon account, and you'd gone through the onboarding experience. And I did this too, actually, this past week. I also created an Anon account. And why I'm bringing this up now is because I'm, with this big raise, it's like the big question is, okay, growth. It should, how is the network going to continue to grow? And we talked about this with Nick last week as well. Having gone through the onboarding experience with fresh eyes now a couple times, one thing I've noticed is that by default, I think you follow Ethereum. I think you follow Farcaster, and you follow maybe the memes channel. I think these are like the 3 default channels that you follow.
Oh, you want to talk about your 100K warp allowance? Yeah, okay. Now we know where that's coming from. Just kidding. Didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah. Actually, Merkle's not the only company that's raised around. Actually, we've raised around as well. It's denominated in warps, and it's via the channel pass. So, yeah.
The number of people who took that seriously.
I had to reply and say, this is a joke. It's parody. Stop DMing me. There were people who were like, congratulations. I was like, okay, it's a screenshot of warps, and it's posted in memes, and it was verbatim what Dan said. Like, come on. It's a joke.
It's like when everybody started doing the LeBron James, like, I'm taking my talents to, like, people just, I was like, oh no. I was like, the design, we got to go back to the design. If people aren't picking up on the contextual clues, maybe we got to make them more obvious.
Yeah. But I think, we talked about this with Nick last week, which is like, what's going to be the thing that really leads to these big jumps in growth? And I got to be honest, like going through the onboarding experience, I was like, you can choose your interests, but if you skip everything, the default experience still feels like it trends kind of nerdy, like kind of technical, kind of crypto. And like, I don't know, I was thinking, what if you were just like interested in sports, or what if you were interested in, I don't know, like something categorically different, or maybe you're even like anti-crypto. You think crypto is a scam. Like there should still be a pathway, I feel. And maybe that they could say, well, that's what selecting interest is. But I don't know. I guess like I'm connecting the dots here between huge raise and growth and like new user experience in Warpcast, and trying to think through like how might that change, to get these more quote unquote normie users.
That's a great point. I've thought about this a lot too, especially as it relates to knowing that they're doing raise and just knowing that they could build. I think Dan also said one time, like, oh no, Warpcast could, like, if you think about Warpcast as you think about Facebook, like that could become a public company one day. Farcaster obviously wouldn't, but you can think about Farcaster just being a token governed protocol. And then you can think about, I have no idea. I said token governed protocol. I have no idea. I know nothing about the token. I only know what Dan and Varun have said about the token, which is that there is none.
Are going to freak out right now.
I know. I just said that. I'm just like, if you imagine 10 years from now, you can have like 2 public things. One is like the public protocol, and then the other one is the public company. And so I think that they're just going to continue focusing on Warpcast. But the beauty is, I've even seen this since Frames in the last 2 months. The developer ecosystem is now richer than ever before, and there's new clients and new apps popping up literally all over. And a lot of developers now are just using Warpcast as a quick go-to-market, as quick testing, iterating, etc. And now you're seeing more clients pop up. So I can even mention, let's say 2 of them. One is Nook. God. Ooh. And then the other one is buoy as well. And then we should also talk about cast actions. Oh yeah, you guys, in addition to everything that we're going to talk about, we do have an agenda. We just dove into the raise because it's just happened. But I can see those already starting to be their own clients. Bountycaster, for instance, just also redid their entire website. It lives within Warpcast right now, but you can very much see that living outside, and then that becomes its own app and its own client living outside. And so what I'm starting to see is that these new clients and apps are starting to pop up all over. And maybe it's okay then if Warpcast is focusing on attracting all of the developers and more developers. And we'll see where that goes. But I know a lot of people are like, oh, it's so technical and it's like so geeky and nerdy, et cetera. And I'm like, well, it's actually worked really well because there's going to be an Instagram thing. There's going to be all these others. And at the end of the day, someone once told me, they're like, oh, I can't believe you're on Farcaster because like your energy or your vibe feels like more like trendy and lensy. And I was like, I fucking love the Farcaster community. I was like, I actually feel like those are my people. Like, I love them. I don't care about like feeling trendy. And I'm also like, what? Like, what a weird thing to say to someone anyways. But it made me realize like, I love these people. And I think these people, what's the Chris Dixon comment? what smart people are doing for hobbies on the weekend are what everybody's doing in 10 years. And so if right now Warpcast is attracting those smart people doing weekend projects, I mean, like the Frames hackathon that ETH Global did, it was like 200 submissions. It was crazy. So kind of that's what I'm thinking about. But I agree. From my Anon account, I was like, I still can't invite any of my normie friends. Sorry.
Yeah.
Like I was just like, sorry, I can't invite my normie friends. And like even my experience as a power user, I'm like, I spend times in my direct messages. I spend times in the TED channel. I spend times in FarCon. And then like I'll look at kind of everyone I super follow to see what they're saying. But other than that, I'm not really using the feed. Yeah. And I looked at the feed the other day. It was like degen, purple, blah, blah, blah. I was like, no one knows what the hell. If you come in, you're like, what the fuck is everyone talking about?
Yeah. I have felt that this past week. I was like, I feel like with Dan being on vacation, the network got like overrun. It was like the barbarians at the gates. Like I was like, every single thing in my feed is just like some kind of meme coin thing. I don't really see any conversations. So actually going back to Nook, I'm really excited about Nook. I have not yet tried Buoy. I think I missed out on the test flight. I saw the test flight link and I was like, I didn't click it in. I couldn't context switch. So I still have to check out Buoy. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that. But Nook,
let's talk about Nook. Yeah.
Yeah. And one thing
high level. Wait, let's do high level.
High level.
We're bad at this. We're bad at this as podcasters. Okay.
Right.
What is Nook?
What is Nook? So Nook is a client. It's a Farcaster client. It is a iOS app. It was made by emo.eth and Kartik. They've been working on it for a while. What else? What other?
That's good. Kartik, okay. I think, did Manifold, and it's one of the clients, and basically it's on test flight too. So I think what they did, which is unique, different, is that they actually did build a mobile app for it that is available on test flight and iOS. So that's it. Now let's talk about the experience.
Yes. So like the onboarding experience, I'm kind of one of these people that just like blast through it. I'm like, I'll figure it out as I go. I don't want like a tutorial. Just show me the app. So I kind of.
But we should talk about this because
I know you had some thoughts. So what are your thoughts?
But when you sign up, also I think it's kind of like a marginal amount of warps to create an account, which is good. The other thing I will say is it also makes you choose channels to follow. So instead of forcing you to choose people, it makes you choose. It just makes you choose channels. I was confused at that part because I was like, wait, I'm confused. I can't tell if like it auto chose channels for me, etc. But otherwise, the onboarding process is pretty seamless. And they tell you it. I just got caught at that one, like I couldn't figure out. I was like, wait, I don't want to follow the degen channel, or like I don't want to do this. And maybe they just took it from like what channels I'm following in Warpcast, but it was good signal for me to be like, oh, I'm actually following way too many channels in Warpcast from like the OG channel influx that I've just never unfollowed. And so anyways, that to me was fine. But then, you finally get to the main app. And what did you think?
So the thing that I struggled with the most is the like mental models of nooks and shelves. And then within a shelf, you have feeds, users, and frames. And so I think I'm still kind of struggling with like, what are these things? What do they mean?
Yes.
If you think about,
Same.
like a common pattern would be like lists, it's like many apps have this notion of lists. And so when you open up a new app and they're like, oh, we have this list feature, you're like, okay, I kind of know what that means. I've never encountered like a nook, and I've never encountered a shelf. And within a shelf, you have these other options. So I think like the taxonomy of things and what they mean for me was like pretty confusing. I bumbled my way through creating a nook with a shelf that is a feed.
I'm already confused.
Yeah. So I think the taxonomy is you have nooks, and nooks have shelves, and then shelves can basically have a number of different things: feeds, frames, trending, whatever. What I hot rodded, which is what I've been wanting forever, and I think this will actually really change my farcaster experience, is I've wanted like path. I've wanted just 20 users that I follow and interact with. And I have that finally. So I'm really excited about this because I feel like there's a lot of people I follow and I like following a lot of people because I like being able to get a like broad sense of what's going on. But I also kind of like being able to interact with like the homies, you know? And so it's hard to do that. Like without a list feature, you can't really do that. So I see myself actually using both Warpcast and Nook. Warpcast for me has become like a productivity tool. Like I actually do work.
I mean, it's where you do work
Warpcast.
there.
Yeah. So I see myself using Warpcast web pretty much like during working hours. And then I think at night and weekends being more like Nook oriented with the small, you know, more intimate group of follows. So that's my take so far. Overall, I really like it a lot. I just think that the mental models are a little unclear still.
Yeah. Okay. Let's I 100% agree. And I feel like I was a little wobbly in the onboarding process because of the taxonomy and because of the kind of the language that they used. But overall, I think it's really interesting and I'm excited about it as well. The one thing I will say, I agree with you. I also am using Warpcast as a productivity app in a way, in that I'm organizing so much FarCon stuff. I have to do X, Y, and Z there. I have my DCs for like business development or like Club TED stuff is just all there. And so I actually can never leave Warpcast until DC's messaging is somehow available elsewhere. And I'm locked in because of that. The switching cost is way too high. I have nowhere else where I will have an active group chat like that. But I 100% agree. Like my feed, I'm not using it. And the way that they have some of their tabs are more Reddit and Twitter like in a way, in which it's your shelves. How do we even describe it? Maybe we should describe it for the people. Nook is where you curate your feed. So as Johnny said, he created a Nook. You can share your Nook with somebody else. So if Johnny creates a killer feed and he's like, this is amazing, I want to share it with Ted, great. Share it with me. I can then get the same feed that he's getting. So it's really interesting custom algo that you can actually share with other people. So you can have a Farcaster channel Nook, you can have a Nook for your project or your team, you can do your Nook from scratch, which is what Johnny did. And then these shelves. I still don't really understand shelves. Shelves, I think, are just like, okay, here's the filters. Like here are the different views that you can look at your Nook from, right? Is my understanding. So shelves is, here's everyone you're following, here's all of the trending, here's the popular. Like these are like how you're viewing the content that is in your Nook, is my understanding. And also, if we're wrong, Nook guys, please tell us, because we're both trying to figure this out. And I think it's, again, that's the way I did it, is like, oh, I have my Nook, and then I can look at my different, like these are my different feeds, like my different filter, like views, where I feel like on Reddit or Twitter or anywhere else, you can just be like, which view do you want? And that's how I was thinking about it.
I think the shelves are actually, you can have many shelves inside of one Nook.
Yeah, and multiple views of.
Yeah, but I think that the shelves they are like their own algos. They're like their own feeds.
Yes.
It's not the Nook that's the custom feed. It's the shelf, right? The Nook is like a group of custom feeds. Oh, really?
I think a Nook is how you're choosing the content. So a Nook is like, where do you want to get your content from? What are the people you want to pull in? What are the channels you want to pull in, etc. And then the shelf is like, how do you want to be viewing this content? Like how are we regurgitating this to you? So are you looking like media only? I really like the idea of media only. So you're only looking at images, you're only looking at, etc. That being said, you can also customize. So like you're customizing the channel, or you're customizing the content at the high level Nook view. Then you're customizing how you're viewing it in the shelf view. But even within the shelf, you can choose channels and users.
Right.
So the customization is like customization on steroids. But it's so novel because we haven't done this. Also, look, the sun's coming out. I'm not in a cave anymore. The sun's coming out. Dude, my brain is not working. That I don't think we're used to having this level of customization. And so it's not as intuitive as it could be because of that. So that's all I'll say.
Yeah, I agree with that. Okay, now let's move to Buoy. I don't have it, so I can't speak on it. I'm curious to hear your take on it.
Buoy is also a new client. I'm just going to call it a client. It's more, I would call it a productivity app as well. It's by Mikey Fista. I've asked him 100 times how to say his name. I just call him Fista. But what it is obviously, if you guys know what Searchcaster is, it's a search functionality. If you know what Alertcaster is, we've talked about it before on the podcast. It's kind of like Google Alerts. You sign up, you get an email. It's been by Searchcaster's by Greg. Alertcaster's by Andy Jago. And they're both really great, but both aren't being worked on full time. And so what Fista has done is saying like, okay, I actually see this as a really valuable tool, is having good search functionality and better alerts, especially for accounts that are getting tons of notifications or accounts that want to know what's being said about them. And so what he's done is you sign up, you log on, and you create buoys. And buoys are what you want to be getting notifications on if people talk about a certain topic. So for instance, I could say TED. I want to know when anybody mentions TED, and it will give me a feed of when anybody's mentioning TED in a cast, and I get a notification automatically. So I don't have notifications turned on for Warpcast because it's way too many, but I can turn on my Buoy notifications, and like within seconds, I get a notification if someone mentions TED in their cast. It doesn't even need to be at TED. It can just be TED in a cast. Nice. I could also do it for FarCon. Like, okay, I want to know everything. And within Buoy, there's also filters as well. So some of the filters you can do when you're adding a Buoy are how often do you want to get notifications? What are some of the different filters? I think it's still quite primitive right now, but I have to admit, it was the worst thing ever to onboard onto Buoy when the Dracula feed was just me, because every single notification is literally, here, I'll read some of these to you. Hi, I just earned blood doom scrolling on Dracula. Why do I only see videos of TED on my home screen? Literally. Is there anybody else besides TED that I can reshare from Dracula?
That's hilarious.
Took my son to watch his first wrestling match. Watch the excitement in between all the TED videos on his feed. I'm like, this hilarious. Is so bad. And it goes on and on. Somebody even asked if I paid Dracula to have all of my videos on there. I looked at that. Oh, no. Did I? Anyone who know, I'm like, this is the cringiest thing. I've even made a cast being like, can somebody please make other content? And I tried to make it. Here we go. The experiment made it so the cast was quick to find by scrolling through everything about TED, blah, blah, blah. It's just like, wow. God damn. So, yeah.
Well, okay, so quick tangent. I mean, they scrubbed all your content from TikTok, but like, they should have done that to other people as well to balance it out, right? Because it's like you have like all these videos and nobody else has as many videos, so you're like populating the feed.
Well, there are a lot of other videos. I think they changed the algo, so that's true. But at the beginning, that wasn't true. Like there's tons of content on the app. Actually, their algorithm is broken. It's not broken. It is broken. They said, oh, okay, we're going to do it. Like if you follow this person, they weighted it by followers. And so obviously Coop and I are on there and we have a lot of followers, but the whole beauty of, so that's why it's just people are only seeing our videos is because it's weighted by the number of followers you have.
Got it.
But I don't know how they landed on that design, and they're fixing it. But I don't know even at the start how they landed on that design, because the beauty and the power of TikTok is that it's meritocratic, and that the way TikTok works is that they show your video, no matter who you are, to 200 users. And based on how those 200 users interact with your video, that's whether or not the TikTok algorithm boosts your video more.
Interesting.
So if you're an absolute nobody and you post a video and the first 200 people who see the video love the video, watch it to completion, share it with friends, comment, etc., your video will go viral. And Dracula, the only person you can discover on it right now is me, and I don't want you to discover me. And yeah. So anyways, that's just like my 2 cents on the Dracula's thing, that I think they tried to be like, oh, let's integrate the Farcaster social graph. It backfired on them, the way that they implemented it, but they'll fix it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Back to Buoy.
Okay.
Is Buoy just a mobile app or is it also desktop?
Buoy's mobile. I don't know if they have a desktop, but it's really fast. Linda actually posted about it from Bountycaster, and she's like, it's amazing because now I can, anytime someone mentions bounties, Bountycaster, Bounty bot, and doesn't tag, she's getting the notification, and she can basically like flies on shit. He's like right there being able to answer. So for Fabric or Hypersub, etc., I can also see you guys using it and it being valuable. The other thing I'll mention is like cast actions. As we talk about like external, internal cast actions, I think the scalability and how Buoy can grow to continue meeting people's needs is high potential. So
yeah, the only thing that throws me off there is that it's mobile. Like if it's sort of oriented towards people who want to get keyword notifications, which is most likely going to be like founders and builders, I guess. I mean, I'd be curious to hear what you think, what the other kind of users might be. But for me, desktop is like way faster than mobile, especially for this. Because I've been using Alertcaster for this use case for, I don't know, a year and a half. Like as soon as Andy launched it, I was like, I want this right now. And so that's how I already do this now. Like anytime there's a mention of Fabric or Hypersub, I'm there. I'm right there. And it's actually, we've gotten creators this way. Someone said, oh, I want to do a Hypersub, but I don't know how, or I don't know why, or whatever. And they won't mention me. They won't mention any of the accounts. I see that. And I'm just like, yo, happy to help. I'll send them a DM. And then like whatever, a week or two later, they'll deploy. So to me, this is like, this has been like a secret weapon for our company and for connecting with creators and stuff. But like if my only option was to do that on mobile, it would, I think, really hamstring the speed at which I can do that. Because honestly, that takes up a fairly large portion of my day. I mean, I'll usually have between, 10 and 30 Alertcaster notifications. And oftentimes
are they sending them at the end of the day or as soon as they're happening?
I have them set up to be sent as soon as they're happening, but there's still like about an hour delay. So like if that was on mobile, it's just like having to switch between apps. Oftentimes I'm having to copy links or send a DM. It's like, I don't know.
This is good feedback. Like, I'm sure like mobile is typically harder to build than web. Or like if it's just, I did give feedback. I did say, I think having a email is great because sometimes I'm not on my phone. And I did say that. But for right now, it's pretty easy because it gives you the cast notification. You can really quickly go see it. It's within seconds. And then you can I get the notification and then I just search the person on Warpcast. And because it's so instant, it's their latest cast.
That context switching, I think, is not great. Ideally you want to do it right there. Yeah.
There's trade-offs, right? So they built a super fast mobile app. I'm sure Mikey, P-Fista, it's good feedback from a founder who is using a version of your product.
Cast actions. You just started talking about that. So give us the TLDR on cast actions.
Okay. We talked about cast actions last week and I wrote up a little thing about this and I want to be able to try and communicate it because it's quite complicated. Once you when you're trying to describe it to someone, it is quite complicated. And so I'm going to try, you guys, please give us feedback. Is that cast actions to me are exciting because they are an extension or another iteration of frames in a way. So frames allowed devs to do custom stuff. You can see that cast actions can also be a custom action, right? So that's like one thing is that kind of the point of view or the framework that I'm approaching this with is frames is kind of the primitive here, and cast actions is an extension of frames. I'm sure as soon as frames went, they're like, okay, how can we do this like within a cast and with the buttons that you can act or interact with in a cast? So then there's two actions, there's two paths. So one is the cast action itself. So you can take an external action on a cast, meaning you could, in theory, one of the cast actions can be tip degen. That's the most obvious one, is that instead of having to comment tip degen, your cast action is this external action, which is the tipping of degen. And that gets written to a hub, and Yasek is still able to look at that for the next season of degen. The other thing that's really interesting to me is that it then becomes app-specific hub data. So if you think about Nook, which is, let's just use that, Nook implements new functionality within their own casts, right? So you can think of a super like. Let's say they do a super like. Let's say they have mint right there where you can mint a cast that you really, really like. That's your super like. They can then, if like cast actions are this new primitive, they can publish that data, that new type of data to the hub. And so I think that these are really exciting because I think the second one actually makes the first one more powerful. And I have a good like example of how I'm thinking this could work, but I just want to pause there to see if you have any reactions, because I also think like the same way that you and I with frames were like, why aren't these people building frames? Like some of the obvious ones, like how does Uniswap not have a frame? Like how do all these other people like not have a frame when they seem so obvious? And maybe it's just because it's not a priority for them. But I also think that like cast actions are going to take a little bit longer to connect the dots and for us to see the most interesting ones. I think that like the timeline is going to be a little bit more extended than what it was for frames. So anyways, I'll pause there before we go through some like illustrative examples that you and I can just like shoot the shit about.
Yeah, cool. So correct me if I'm wrong. The like my kind of TLDR of cast actions has been like, they're just frames with a smaller UI surface area. I think what you're describing is they're more than that, which is that. So going back to your example, like you can have app-specific actions, and those actions are written to a hub so that if another app wanted to support those actions in their app, they could. So for example, Nook creates this notion of a super like, and they say a super like is X, Y, and Z, and they document it. And they like, this is our new, cast action. And they have some structured way of writing this to the hub. And then Supercast or Buoy or whatever, Warpcast, name your client, they can say, that's a cool feature. We like how they did that. We too will support super likes in our app. And so it allows developers to benefit from the work that kind of they've done. Like it allows each developer to benefit from the work of all the other developers. Am I understanding it right? That's one
benefit.
Okay.
Yes.
Got it.
Again, people don't need to, but yes, they can implement the same cast action if they want to, or they can use that cast action to improve each user's experience. So like
for example, you said like Uniswap. Like if there was like a Uniswap cast action for say swapping USDC to degen, like base USDC to degen. And then they're like, here's how to do it. Here's how it's structured. And so everyone starts using it. And then other app developers are like, oh, that's like an obviously good feature. We want to have that feature as well. They can now quickly add that cast action into their client.
I don't know if they can quickly do it because the only thing that's being written to the hub is the data on whether or not that action is being taken. I don't know if they'll be able, like if it's an API, then sure. But that's one thing. One thing I will also, another way that I've been thinking about this, and I'll use this in terms of apps. And right now I think it's a little bit limited because there aren't that many apps built on Farcaster. But once you start thinking about integrating with Farcaster, it gets a little bit more exciting. So let's see. The way that I would describe this is like, I took some notes on this because I was trying to figure it out. I'm Ted. Okay, I'm Ted. You know me on Warpcast. You have all of my content. You know what I'm doing in terms of frames. All of that data is like already there. And with Airstack, you can get my on-chain data. Now, let's say I also use a variety of other apps within the ecosystem. Or just let's say, I don't know. You're looking at my data. On a Saturday morning, you see that I'm using receipts XYZ, which is the Strava equivalent. We'll just say that. And I'm running, and all of a sudden, I finish my run. You can tell, oh, she's going for a long run on Saturday mornings. And I kind of basically write that I went for a run. Or that data is written to the hub. So Receipts implements a cast action, and the cast action is like, oh, everyone can see that like Ted is going for a run on a Saturday morning. She usually goes on Saturday mornings. If other people are also doing this, you're like, oh, they must have a little run group on a Saturday morning. That is written to the hub. So now you have that new cast action. Then you see after my run, I actually go to my favorite coffee shop and I check into that coffee shop using Blackbird, the new restaurant loyalty program platform. You can see that check-in of like, oh, I'm here, the same way that you used to like check in on Facebook or like Foursquare, is now also a new cast action that's written to a hub. So that information is also on chain. Then you can see, oh, later, I actually RSVP'd to an event that was like a run and a coffee meetup on events XYZ. And that RSVP is also written to a hub because right now it's not. None of that data is all there. Now, like, now you think about the richness of the data that's now available on a hub from all of those different actions. Because let's say your FID is associated with all of those different platforms, which is, it should be. Like my FID is my social identity. That's my account. That's my profile. That's portable. And I want that to be on everything. And now all of that data is associated with my own identity. I get to choose whether or not it's written to a hub as part of interacting with these, but you could see that it benefits me because then the way that you can provide targeted personal algos or recommendations based on all of that data available to me is like mind blowing for both me as a personal user, for brands, for companies. For me, that is wildly cool. You could see a lifestyle app that's built on Farcaster that takes in all of this data that is literally like perfectly designed to be everything that you'd want it to be based on your like hub data. I don't know. That's just like one interesting thing for me. I don't know if I did the best example talking about it. I was trying to think of like what are real world things that right now, all of the examples people are talking about are pretty much like crypto things. And I was like, okay, no. For this to work, we need to think about it in a real world context of like, how are we using social apps today that we're not using on Warpcast really yet or Farcaster. Right. So that's my example.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about the interaction between hub data and on-chain data. Like maybe there's an app that, reads what you're like the data that's being written to the network of Farcaster hubs. And then it's like whatever, doing something on chain on your behalf or, gives you privileged access or whatever. Like this is one of the big issues with like, things going on chain is that is storage. There's a lot of stuff you can't really put on chain. It just doesn't make sense to. It's too expensive. And so maybe there's this like, parallel network. It's also decentralized where this data can be written to, but it's like the interesting, design space is at the intersection of those two. It's not just hub data and it's not just on-chain data. It's like, what is the sum of these two data sets, these two networks get you? That's interesting to think about. Yeah. Like, and
as somebody who has like a Club TED hyper sub, I'm like, oh, this is amazing. Like if I can get all of this data about my community, that means if I am, I don't know, knock on wood, you'll figure it out, that if all of a sudden I'm starting to get an insane amount of inbound interest from brands or people who want to work with me, et cetera, I can actually have so much better conviction about, oh, I already know what's authentic to me, but I also then have way better information on what's valuable and meaningful to the community. Because more and more stuff gas prices and kind of the crypto UX improves, we already have, even if I look at Zora information, even if I look at other people's hypersubs, like you're starting to see, then think about Coinbase Commerce, like in Coinbase Wallet or all these others. You'll be able to see how people are actually, what they're buying in person. Then you have all this. It's like, we talked about this weeks ago where we're like, was that maybe our first podcast about like how valuable on and off chain data are used together?
Yeah.
And this to me is just another example and extension of that. So
yeah,
I'm so
I really
excited.
Like that. Yeah, I like that a lot. I mean, just going to the hypersub use case, like one thing that we're very curious to learn more about is you look at a given network of, hypersub subscribers and you're like, who are these people? What are they doing? Like, what are they doing on chain? What NFTs do they hold? How active are they? Like, what is the average, net worth held in their hot wallets? Like, just all these kind of interesting questions. And the reason why it's useful is because you can start to think, well, maybe we can help cross-pollinate. Maybe we can help do brand deals. Maybe we can help do creator collabs. But in order for those to make sense, you kind of, you need to know about the community of subscribers. So, like I'm very hesitant to, whenever in my mind, I think like off-chain data, I just think like some app, someone's database, and it's highly permissioned. It's like there's this third thing, which is like this network of hubs. It's not on-chain, but it's also not like some proprietary, like Twitter API or Facebook API or something. It's not like in this permissioned prison of a big company. It's like so you get a lot of the benefits of open, decentralized, permissionless, composable without any of the cons of like having to pay gas, having to like, figure out how to get all this on chain in a scalable way. So yeah, that's really, really interesting. Like that for me is like a little bit of a light bulb going off. Like when you talk about it in terms of if we fast forward into this world where this already exists, and so there's this rich data set of Club TED members that lives on these hubs, we could then, access that, read that, and then make sense of it, and then pair it with what's happening on chain. It's really exciting. I mean, the one thing that is, I think, important to keep in mind is you could imagine this becoming a privacy nightmare pretty fast. You know what I mean?
That's why I think you can choose, like even Dracula, you choose what you write to the hub or not.
That's right.
Like you choose what you can direct thing. And so I think that is key, because right now Apple is giving everyone the option of like, do you want this app to collect your data or not? And you can say like, no, I don't want it to track. And so you can imagine just like the new question is actually like, do you want to write this data to a hub or not? It's not like you're giving permission to a company to have your information. You're actually saying like, do you want this data to be public? And so I think that's just like a whole new interesting consumer behavior decision that we'll have to make is like, oh, do you actually care more or less if a private company has your data versus a public database, knowing that the benefit on the other side is actually you'll get more personalized everything, and that you won't get it. It doesn't feel as weird when you're talking about a microphone and then all of a sudden you get like tons of Instagram ads based on microphones, because you're like, oh, I actually know that like I wrote about this and that's how I'm getting targeted for it. So anyways, I'm like so excited about it, and we could be so off, guys. Like I actually have no idea if this is the right way to think about it. This is just how I'm thinking about it. What
we should do is we should get Horsefax on an episode of Connecting the Dots, and he can help correct us, because I'm pretty sure he's the one kind of driving this. So
I think so too.
The other question, I don't know if you know the answer to this, but was how, like with frames, you just paste in a URL. Like you just make sure that you have, the metadata on your app so that when you paste the URL, it shows up as a frame. Is that how cast actions will work? Is like you paste in some sort of URL and then the cast action shows up? Or
that's a good question.
How does the cast action get displayed? Is it up to the developer? Like, does Warpcast have to be like, oh, we're going to implement the degen tipping cast action and like the receipts, like whatever fitness tracking, like, or is it more the user side?
I don't know. And that's where I'm interested too. It could be like context specific where Warpcast, well, obviously it's going to be in Warpcast initially. It's interesting because the notion is actually like in frames is the bracket. They're custom cast actions. So it would be the frame message format. So yeah, I think it would be, you'd have to have some sort, you'd have to paste a URL, but you can see that just being like, maybe every URL in a certain channel, like in the degen channel, automatically has, like every cast in a degen channel is automatically in that URL or automatically includes that URL. So it does say like set frame URL to the cast action, set a button index, and then set the cast ID. So
got it.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a combination of like users and developers. So there's some developer support that's required, but then the user is ultimately the one adding the action to the cast.
Yeah. So users are the ones who can enable the cast action. So a user actually has to opt into it.
Got it.
Yeah. I think it's cool.
So yeah. Okay. I like that. Yeah. I think it's fascinating. I think the more things, the more hooks that, developers have into the network, the better. I think that's how, this is something I've been saying for a long time, is like, the way crypto wins is by working together. If you try to be this monolithic walled garden, if you have a Web3 company but a Web2 mindset, you're not going to make it. And so I think it's exciting to me that like this is where Warpcast is like kind of allocating resources. Is like, how can we get how can we benefit more from the ecosystem of developers? So this is super exciting to me. I think it's still pretty early though.
I mean, it's super early. I 100% agree with you that this is the beauty of Warpcast. Like this is the beauty of the Merkle team. And again, this almost brings us back to the beginning. This is why I think and so excited that they have such a strong valuation and that they just are getting this amazing attention, is because they truly are in it for everyone. Yeah. And they know that for them, in order for them to win, everybody needs to win. They can't do it any other way. And so they could right now be taking a very, very different approach with Warpcast. And instead they're using Warpcast as a resource center for everybody else to get started. And for me, that's so important. And that's the whole point. And you read right on and you're like, duh. And I was at a Farcaster meetup last night in LA, and we started, I brought it up as, hey, do you guys see that there are some Web 2 or like Web 3 companies that are doing really well that are now trying to create moats in a way that doesn't make sense? And everyone was like, tell me more. And I was like, okay, let's talk through this. Who is like fully decentralized versus not decentralized? And what are the ways in which people are decentralizing? How are some of these entities, projects, etc., becoming more and more decentralized? Uniswap's a great example of somebody, because like anyone can start a Uniswap pool. Like that to me is amazing. And then, there's conversations about the fee structure, et cetera. I've just been like starting to think more and more about this, because I think the difference between Merkle and Farcaster is so apparent. And I think it's really honorable and respectable and is setting a good case study for the fact that Merkle with Warpcast is using it to be like, for us to succeed, we actually need to get everyone else super, super, super involved. Anyways, I'll just pause there.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I would also add that what's important about this point that you've made is that I don't believe that this decision was made, out of altruism. I don't think that, I think if, just looking at it cynically. Which decision? Well, the decision to say support minting with warps using Zora contracts from Warpcast. Like, why did they do that? Is it because, Dan and Jacob are friends and they wanted to like sit around the campfire and sing Kumbaya? No, it's because they're like each are acting in their own self-interest. However, it resulted in a positive sum outcome. So Dan like does not want to have to build all this stuff themselves. They don't want to have to go and build a bunch of 1155 and 721 contracts, but they do want the ability to very easily mint from within the feed. Jacob doesn't want to have to go and build Warpcast, although I don't know, maybe they do. They have their own kind of social network and graph and followers and mobile app and stuff. So I don't know, but he definitely wants distribution, right? So it's like they each got something that, you know, they wanted while also benefiting the other person. So this is, to me, but again, like I think that they're doing it because it benefited them, and this is what a market is. Like, you know, participants inside of a market are operating in their own best interest, but in doing so, they're kind of making everything better. Prices go down, quality goes up, competition is good. Like, so I think the more that you're oriented in this way, like the more that your system can like benefit from integrations by others, and the more that your system can be benefited by integrating others' work, the better. It's when you start to think like, no, I want to have this kind of monopolistic, like winner take all, like everything has to happen here. That to me is just like this very Web 2 mindset. And I just don't think that that's not going to be the winning strategy for Web3, in my opinion. Like, I think that, so like I mentioned this last week, we're talking to Soren and Parker, and it's like, we're having good conversations about ensuring, and then a couple other founders as well I've been speaking to. And it's like, okay, let's just be honest. How can we make sure that you guys are making money when we're integrating you, and we're making money when you integrate us? So we can still act in our own self-interest while at the same time benefiting each other. If you instead you look at everybody else who has a complementary feature as a competitor that you need to like fork their shit, or you need to like, you know, build a better version of it, you're never going to be able to scale to the demands of the market. Like, you're never going to be able to give the market everything that it wants as fast as it wants. And so I just think like you're going to lose out to the people that are more cooperative. This, I got to say, I don't at all feel like this is a broadly shared view, like amongst founders working in Web3 right now. Like, I think that it seems very unevenly distributed so far as I can tell. Like, some people I'll have this conversation with and they're like, oh my God, totally, absolutely, very aligned. Other people are like very much, you know, like very cool and very, you know, very cryptic about their approach here. I think another huge factor is, you know, how does your business make money? Like, are you charging consumers? Are you charging creators? Like, are you charging developers? That, I think, is ultimately what's kind of upstream of people's value system. There's like the great Upton Sinclair, I don't know who the quote is, you can't convince a man of something his paycheck prevents him from being convinced of, or something like that. And it's just this comment on incentives, which is, if someone's incentivized not to collaborate, they're not going to collaborate, and they're not going to think collaboration is a very good idea. And so this is where, to me, it's like, it matters a lot. Like, what is the fee structure of your protocol? Who is it charging? Because ultimately that's going to determine whether or not you see other people in the space as friends or foe. So I don't think there's a lot of discussion around this. Yeah.
It's so interesting to me. We all don't like monopolies.
That's why we're here.
Yeah, we don't like monopolies. And so the point is, like, you shouldn't be trying to just fork someone's feature, fork someone's project, and like incorporate it on your own, because then you're just becoming a monopoly. And also, you have to be decentralized. That's just not going to work from a regulatory perspective either. And another thing is just like, damn, the whole point is that you can experiment early. Like, the beauty of interoperability and the beauty of working together on these things is like, great, you actually don't need to build out the resources. And if you start integrating and you're like, oh, this is actually like a shitty integration and this isn't going to work for us, at that point, you can say, oh, we tried it and we didn't really have to use that many resources to get it up and running. And we learned from this. And then both people will probably be like, hey, this wasn't that valuable to us. Like, let's part ways. And then at that point, you can decide whether or not it's worth it for you to build a better version, or for you to think it's not worth it at all.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Yeah. And I think I just don't, like I said, you can only move so fast when you operate in that way. And I think you're inevitably going to lose out to people who are collaborative. I mean, this is why humans are at the top of the food chain. It's because we work together, And so I think like the same, building on chain, building these kind of interoperable tools, they're giving us the same opportunities to build in that way. And I just think it's going to, right now, everyone working in crypto, we're all kind of the Davids, and like the Web 2 ecosystem is all the Goliaths. But I think that balance is going to switch. And I think a big part of why is because of a lot of things that we've been talking about. It's because channels will be on chain and anyone can create one. It's that anyone can create a client. It's that you can get these kind of 1 + 1 = 3 integrations between different systems in this very low lift way. So I just think like, in addition to being kind of a bad idea, I think it's just a losing strategy. So,
it is.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm getting emotional like thinking about it as I hear you talk. I'm actually like impassioned about this. Like it makes me like angry in a way. Also because like a personal story was, I had like offered to have an advisor role because I'm obsessed. I want to like continue. I was offered myself to be like, hey, if I don't know if people know this, I'm moving on from my job. I offered to be like, hey, I'd love to stay involved in some way. I'm happy to serve in an advisor role. And the response I got back was, oh, you already have plenty of equity. And I was like, holy shit. In what world did you think I offered to do that?
To get more equity.
Because I was thinking about equity.
Right.
Like in what world? And I was actually like, you can probably hear it in my voice. I was offended because that's not my motivation for anything. And I think a lot of founders right now, if like your motivation is on like financial success and that's your only motivation and you're not focused on building an amazing product that people fucking love, that to me is like great. You probably will be successful if you're that strongly motivated of financial return, but that's not necessarily going to get you the best, longest lasting, most sustainable product and platform in the world. And I think Steve Jobs has said that so many times. He was like, I was like 25 and had a net worth of 100 million. And at that point on, I was like, I do not care about the money. Yeah. I care about giving people amazing products. And what matters to me is going to bed at night knowing that I did something wonderful. And so anyways, I just want to say that is like, I've just been reading Steve Jobs stuff over and over and over and over again. And he, like, if he were, I would just like be so curious to see what he has to say about this space right now, because there's so many parallels. We're just like living in the same world. But yeah, that's just, you can tell I like grinded my gears and I was just like, wow, this is just the way that some founders are thinking nowadays. Is on it's like, funny. Okay.
I was listening to the episode, the NFL episode of Acquired and the Visa episode of Acquired. And in both cases, I think a similar situation emerged. In the case of Visa, you had D-Hawk trying to convince the merchant banks essentially to act against their own economic self-interest in the short term so that they could form something that was like, I mean, many orders of magnitude more valuable in the long term. A similar situation existed with the NFL teams, where you had like a parallel distribution of the quality of the team. So there were like a few teams that were like really, really good, and like a lot of teams that were not so good, and it made the games boring. And what they found out is like that actually that was really good for a few teams, but really bad for most of the teams. And as a league, it kind of dragged the league as a whole down. And so the commissioner at the time, I forget his name, was basically like, we need to, like, some of the teams that are benefiting need to be willing to sacrifice to some of the teams that aren't, so we can kind of balance this out so that we can actually make something bigger than what we currently have or will ever have with this existing structure. And I think like both of those are interesting examples because there was like a charismatic leader who could connect the dots and kind of see how this is going to play out, but could also see this future where they were like, oh my God, this could be wildly bigger than any of us can imagine, but it's going to require us to play a long game, not a short-term game. And it's like, it's funny because that that was like pulling teeth. Some people got it right away, many people did not. And I don't know, I see a similar situation emerging with like crypto founders, where it's like, if you start playing kind of this very short-term game that's like not collaborative, you don't want to work with other people, it's like, maybe you get somewhere in the short term. I actually don't think that you do, because I don't think you're materially differentiated enough from Web 2. But it's like, I don't know, I see Dan as somebody like this. Like, I see Farcaster as something very much like this, which is like, let's create a situation that's very long term, that where by working together, we all benefit. And the benefit is like so much bigger than the things that came before. But you have to be willing to kind of play this long game and collaborate. But I'm with you. Like, it's very frustrating to me when I encounter people who are just not at all oriented this way. And I'm kind of like, what are you doing here? Like, well, how do you think you're going to win? What's the winning strategy, if not this? So yeah, I'm with you.
It's like, it does make me wonder. I'm like, what are your priorities? Like, how are you prioritizing? Again, you can't read somebody's mind. The best you can do is ask. And so it just makes me think like, oh, if this is your reaction to, an option to collaborate, how are you prioritizing everything? What values matter to you? And it's very telling. And sometimes you just gotta accept it, and you're like, okay, that's that. It's not worth trying to convince them to collaborate. This is what it is.
Because there's other founders that are, so it's like, this is always my philosophy. Like, when I was freelancing, is I was like, life's too short for shitty clients, because there's so many amazing clients out there. So like, don't waste any time at all on someone who you don't have a really good relationship with, because just drop them, because there's going to be someone else you're going to have a phenomenal relationship with. And I think the same thing is true with with what we're doing now with founders and with companies. It's like, just if someone isn't aligned, just move on, because there's for everyone that isn't, there's many that are. So just go towards the one that are.
Go and be free.
Yeah.
Go and be free. Okay. You guys, we're supposed to be doing meme coin stuff. Shout out to Yes to Crypto, because he helped me put together a full list of different Farcaster meme coins. I will run through the list, and then I will actually only spend time discussing any two of them. Okay? There's degen.
Perfect.
There's Thank You Based God. There's Frame, there's Gloom, there's degen backwards, there's Thank You Dan, there's LOL Sorry DWR, there's Ham, there's Popcorn, there's Brock, there's Higher. Then there's Enjoy, there's Imagine, there's On-Chain, there's Cheese, there's Flag, there's Purr. You're like, what the fuck? There is so many of these. Then there's Far, then there's Points, there's Wow, there's Farts 2. All of those got messed up. Then there's Ticker. Ticker, as we all know, was a complete rug, and the writing was on the wall. There was red flags everywhere on that one. There was a whole bunch of other ones. And the thing that I will say is that I've seen a lot of VCs doing this. Degen is unique. Degen is not a meme coin. To call degen as a meme coin is actually insulting to degen in my point of view. And I say that as a third-party observer, even though I am an angel investor in degen. Very small, you guys. Don't be like, oh, she's pumping her own bags. Like, no, I'm definitely not. She is pumping the bugs. Okay. Degen is, yes, part meme coin, but it's also part peer-to-peer funding and peer-to-peer social interaction. It's also part developer grants, and it's also part native currency for those apps that get grants. It's managing all of these like network effects in combination. There is nothing that has been like this, you guys. This is the fucking economy that is built on top of a society. And I think this is what we've talked about, and we looked at it, and now we've just like had to trust that it would run its course, and like it would build into what we're seeing. But I don't actually think that it's basically a completely new category. It is a new currency that is channeling and that is basically sustaining a on-chain society. And to me, that's incredibly unique. And the only other meme coin, quote unquote meme coin, we need a new name for them. The only other community generated token I don't know what to call it. I mean, it's a solo founder, so I don't even know if I can call it a community generated token. The only other thing that I think can do this is Hire, which is also a farcaster native movement. So anyways, that's my one take. I think the only two things we're talking about right now are degen and Hire.
Wow. Okay.
And
Interesting.
Yeah.
So let's level set. Let's step back. How would you define a meme coin? What is a meme coin, and why is degen not a meme coin? Like why do you feel the way that you do towards degen and Hire, but you don't feel that way towards ham?
Enjoy.
Enjoy.
What is like? What do you get out of it? I have no idea. Like, how is it even airdropped? No idea. Degen was airdropped initially with a very thought, like you had to have the farcaster OG, you had to this, you had to that, you had to this. Like there was a sort of airdrop mechanism to it that felt like, okay, this is actually like more community driven. It was also like pretty well adopted and thoughtful. And the intention with it was, oh, there's something we can do that's really unique here to add to the community and elevate the community and give them more to do within Warpcast.
This to me is the category difference between a shitcoin and something that's not a shitcoin, which is utility. That's the one defining feature. And for a long time, I mean, a couple weeks, because this is also recent, I felt that degen was a shitcoin because you couldn't do anything with it other than trade it. And then Yasik, who's such a gangster, you can use tipping. And that blew up and it was super useful. And I was actually thinking about this in the context of Bounty Caster, or like, we built a crowdfunding protocol. Like, I said this in the Club TED group chat. I'm like, users are like water. They'll just follow the path of least resistance. And if you think about bounties, crowdfunding, tipping, moving money, which is fundamentally what crypto is about, moving value, degen is the path of least resistance. It's like every day you are given money and you get more by giving it away. Like it's so smart. It's so clever. And to me, that was the first sign of like, I was clearly wrong. Degen is now because it has utility, it is now like transcended the shitcoin game. But then Yasik didn't stop there. It was like, then it became the kind of native token of Pearl, and then the native token of Dracula, and then the native token of Bracket Game, and now they have an L3. And so what's happened is it started as this kind of like, I think most shitcoins are just PvP money games. It's like, we're all gonna put our money in. We're going to trade this thing into oblivion. There's going to be winners and losers, and then the game is over, and we're going to go on to the next thing. Like, and any pretense, any notion of no, there's a community and there's a roadmap and there's a meow meow meow. No, that's all bullshit. This is a player versus player money game. That's what's happening here. So anything that doesn't have utility, to me, that's just like how I immediately see it. And some people are better at playing the game than others. Some people take the game super, super seriously and kind of know how to take profits and, watch deck screener, and they're like glued to it. And like, they're very, very good at playing the game. And other people are like not at all good at playing the game. But fundamentally, that's what these all are. They're like iterative money games where you could make a lot of money in a short period of time. As soon as Yasik started imbuing it with utility, it stopped becoming just that. I think it actually still is. There's a part of it that still is that, but I think that it's more.
But his vision his vision isn't for it to be that. And you can tell that with the L3 decision. A lot of people are like, why would you make an L3? And I was like, okay. He made an L3 with Syndicate. Also, the team behind Syndicate is fucking world class. I don't know if people know that about Syndicate, because it's not like, I feel like Farcaster is a very certain type of early stage founder, but Syndicate is a world-class team, like very, 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 very impressive, that also has background in venture, and so is really good at pattern matching and really good at forecasting, in my opinion. You're like, why did he end up using like Arbitrum? And that's actually a very important decision. People are like, I don't understand. So if you think back, you're like, what can Arbitrum do that Optimism can't do? And the answer is that Arbitrum allows you to make an L3 in which you get to choose what currency is for gas. You get to choose what it is. And by going on Arbitrum and working with Syndicate, Jacek is able to use degen as the gas. Degen is the gas fee. And that to me is the most thoughtful decision that he had to make, because obviously degen is on base, very base native. And he had to be like, okay, no, we're going to add this complexity because I want degen to be the gas. And just like think about that, because even right now when you're paying Ethereum, let's say you're interacting on base, you're still paying your gas fees in ETH. And guess what? Where do those gas fees go? And who gets to benefit from those gas fees? And just like think about that. I think people are like underestimating that decision and might have criticism about X, Y, and Z. But I think what you can do in terms of how you think about like those gas mechanics and like with the community and holders, et cetera, is very, very sophisticated. And will be very interesting to see how that plays out once they get there. I mean, it is a one-person team. He is a solo founder. He has a lot of help from the community. I'm sure Syndicate will help him as well think through a lot of this, and that's an amazing team to have in your corner. But to me, that's really interesting. Like I had to sit and think about that and was like, why did you do Arbitrum? And the more I thought about it, the more I was like, wow, that was a really tough but right decision in my mind. I think it was the right decision.
I'll take a more pessimistic view on the decision.
Good. Please do.
Yeah, I'll say that my understanding of the way that fees work is that fees on an L3 roll up to the L2 and fees on the L2 roll up to the L1. So if Syndicate is essentially responsible for operating the L3, then they're incentivized to do it because they're going to be earning fees. So
I mean, yeah, they'll earn fees.
Yeah, they'll potentially earn, a lot of fees. So I think like that I think is a powerful motivator. I'll just say that.
That's not a pessimistic view. I'm like, you're just saying that.
Yeah, I guess
I hear you. I hear you.
The pessimistic statement is that it's all financially motivated. That actually it isn't about, what's technically best. It's just like, well, we picked this because this is where we're going to make the most money.
Well, they will make the most money there, but that's because it was the best option, I think. I also think that L3 is interesting because, again, if degen is like powering our society, it's like really nice to think like, oh, you actually just like, for all like silly transactions, you just move whatever degen you want to like put aside as like your play money onto the L3. Mm-hmm. And then like, that's why I think Club Ted Poker on the degen L3 makes so much sense. I'm like, everyone just send like 1,000 degen to the degen L3, and that can be your little poker money that you never have to worry about. Because like degen now for me is like, I'm just holding it. I don't really want to use it that much because it's like I believe in it.
But so
it allows you to have play money.
But isn't that contradictory? Because if everyone's holding, it's like the bad money drives out the good.
That's just me. I agree with you. Not everyone should do that. Too. You should be using it.
No, but it's no one's going to do this. Like if the degen is this ultra valuable thing that keeps going up in value. I mean, we've already seen this happen in weeks where Oxen had this hilarious cast, which was how much did those Girl Scout cookies cost now? And it was like they're the $10,000 Girl Scout cookies. It's Bitcoin pizzas all over again, which is. I don't know if you remember this. There was this frame where you could buy Girl Scout cookies with degen, which people did. I mean, I was giving out $100,000 degen bounties, which I don't even know what that was worth now, but like an enormous amount of money.
Me too.
And so like the point is that now that we've all kind of experienced the pain of doing this, I'm certainly not going to be giving away any of the degen that I still have, which really honestly has all come from tips. So if that's the case, like I think that you now have a problem with the L3, which is no one's going to want to spend it because if it keeps going up, then they're going to want to spend something else. This is why when you go into a casino, you actually have to get chips. You get these a thing that feels like play money but is actually real money, because they don't want, when you're making the bet, they don't want you actually pushing $1,000 across the table. You know, like
same with, you can say the same thing about Ethereum though, is like a lot of people have a lot of their Ethereum on a hard wallet or a ledger or some, you know, like really protected thing. And then you also have just like play money in your MetaMask. And so I think that's how I was thinking about it similarly, is like, okay, you can, if like you're in this mental model that I'm in, it's like, okay, great. Like if you want to hold some of this as an investment class, you can, but let's give you another place where it feels like, okay, you can play with it.
You know, it'd be like, kind of cool is like a degen stable coin or something. Like,
this makes me so happy, because our first podcast, I was like, if somebody built a gaming app, it was just games. You open up the app and it's like blackjack, poker, etc., and it was built on degen, I was like, it would do amazing. And now here we are, like almost 2 months later, and I'm like, or a month and a half later, and I'm like, hell yeah, like I'm gonna try and help make this happen with Club Ted Poker. Okay, we are so over time.
We're over it. But I want to ask you about Hire, because you mentioned that was like the only other one that you're excited about. But why? What's your thesis on Hire? Why are you holding it? Why are you bullish on it? Why does it matter?
I actually don't even know if I'm holding any Hire, which is a dumb mistake on my end. I've been watching it for a while and just like really loving what is going on with like what I'm seeing. And I remember asking, because I like reached out to Six, I think, or Martin, and I was like, yo, what is your meme coin? They were like, the immediate response was like, this isn't mine. So it might be a little bit different. So I think like it has the same like grassroots community kind of like buy-in that we're seeing. It's become, basically people are getting rewarded with Hire if they're helping participate and proliferate the community, which is like, I think what Nouns could have been, but like Nouns doesn't actually Nouns doesn't reward anyone with like actual tokens, like in real time. You have to like do the proposal and then they'll give you money. It's very interesting. I feel like these are like DAOs without like actually, anyways, this take me on another tangent. So that's what I think about Hire, is that you're seeing a lot of the same community involvement. The difference is that degen is a solo founder, and Hire, you can't really tell who owns it. I think it's actually like more of a community owned thing. And so I think you'll get two examples. It's like this whole new type of like category of token category. You'll be able to get two different pathways of it, both of which are valuable. One is the solo founder pathway, and another one is like a much more decentralized, like community owned pathway. And so for me, that's why I'm like, okay, there's actual like utility. It's like used as a currency for actual things. Yeah.
Do you know that? Is that happening?
It's on Zora, I'm pretty sure already.
No, like you can like buy stuff with Hire, or like do things like tip with Hire, and there's like more utility.
You can't. I don't know. I have to do like a fuller deep dive in it, but I've, based on my third party view of just like looking, like if I'm like peeping over the little channel to see peeping over the gate, that's kind of like my take on it right now, is I'm seeing a lot of the same like very authentic community. Like the people involved are like, they're creating art for it. Like there's people who've like never created art or minted before, and they like got really inspired by the concept of Hire. It's also completely ubiquitous, right? Like everybody wants to be better. And the whole concept of Hire is like, oh, you want like higher. I guess like you can think of it in terms of like stock markets. It's just like, no, actually like every day you want to get like better. And that's kind of the framework of it. It's like, oh, positivity, growth, progress is really what Hire embodies. And I think that to me is also something that people get excited about. That's different than a lot of the other stuff.
I have an insane amount of it. I didn't even know this.
What the fuck? How I have you are gonna be a fucking gazillionaire just because of the memes channel.
I have.
Oh my god, I'm so happy for you, but it's like mind blowing. Like this is like truly, you're like, how do I have this? And then your warps, and then also your degen. You know that people get like extra degen. You probably have. I don't even want to. It would make me sick to know how much degen you have.
I gotta say, I was airdropped a sickening amount of degen that I paper handed and sold.
Yeah, me too. Thank you, Greg Skrilloff. F you.
Yeah, when I look at how much that I would have today, it's like honestly, it like makes me sick.
I'm sick. I am sick.
Yeah. It's like honestly, like I could have like bought a house like with the amount of money that I I would have had in degen. But like, I also stand by my statement, which is selling early is buying back your attention. I feel very strongly about that, especially for founders, at least for me.
Dude.
The meme coin I'm trying to build is Fabric. You know, like that's my future, and I'm sticking to it. It's like the creative, like it's like the connoisseur's meme coin. Like the memes are all beautiful.
Yes.
Like
it's amazing.
The people who are like pumping it are like actually kind of dope, like artists
it's amazing.
and designers.
Yes,
and
it's
so
amazing.
So I'm like, okay, I'm like not into the shitcoin game, but if I were gonna pick one to like be a stan about, like it would probably be higher because it's so like the aesthetic is so elevated. But I guess like, yeah, going back to what's the difference between a shitcoin and, you know, not a shitcoin, I think it's utility. And that's the thing that I'm most interested in, is, you know, what can you do with it besides just trade it? We should really get Horsefacts on, because I had a back and forth with somebody on Twitter about this, and he replied and said, hey, look, like this is actually kind of in line with an essay that you wrote on capital formation. And I thought he made a really interesting point about that. And I want to talk to him because I feel like it really is this bottom up, emergent, kind of community driven capital formation. I think for me, the big difference between most of these and say something like degen is that degen has the figurehead of Jacek. Jacek is the decision maker. He's, I think, a visionary leader. He's extremely savvy. Mm-hmm. He's doing these deals with other apps. We've even talked to him, I think, about Hypersub being on the L3 and doing a creator grant. And, you know, so he's very much playing this positive sum game and trying to figure out how to get the token to propagate. If a coin doesn't have that, if, you know, to me, it's like, okay, well then how is it different than one of these PvP kind of shitcoin money games? Like, so that, I don't know, it having utility and it having a leader who can take it to the promised land, I feel like are really, really important differentiators for it to kind of transcend. Because otherwise you have capital formation, but you don't really have any coordination. You don't really have any means by which to make decisions. So I don't know. That's how I'm thinking about meme coins.
I'm so glad that I just turned you on to hire.
But my view on this is that it could just as easily, if we're truly like done, we were just talking about the Goldfinch token. Like you're like, oh yeah, it's like completely divorced from the reality of the market. And it's like, this is what I mean about meme coins is like, they're so radical. Like it could be up 1,000%. You're like, oh my God, I have $100,000 of this coin. And then literally within 24 hours, it could get like a 500% correction. And that's because these markets, you know, there's a lot of fuckery that goes on in these markets. So if you're really trying to make money and not, and like care about it.
I just don't think about it. I don't want to think about it. I don't care about it. This is the thing. I don't even want it. Like the thing about degen is like anything. I'm like, I don't think about that. Again, like I wake up in the morning and I'm like, do I love what I'm working on? Am I adding value? Am I creating something that people love? That's all I care about. And the money will follow. Like, yes, it's amazing if I build a company for people to then benefit from that. But crazy.
No,
the thing is like, I don't know how people do this with a real full-time job though. Like I genuinely don't.
That's what I'm saying.
That's what you cannot. I think about it and I'm like, holy shit. I was like, I can barely keep up with my own shit, let alone trying to make money and all these other things. And I get it. Then I'm like, okay, goes back to something Jesse said earlier this year, where he was like, I think meme coins, like people airdrop farming or blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, I don't think airdrop farming is like that. But what people are doing with Hire and what people are doing with degen, a lot of the time it is adding value in a very interesting way. It's not the normal way where we think it is. So I get it. If you don't have a job or a full-time job and you're just like freelancing and doing a bunch of stuff and you focus however many hours a day on Hire or degen or whatever it is, great. You're getting paid for your value. And, maybe I should be less principled. Maybe I should care less. A lot of people say that. Oh, I have something else I need to tell you. It's gossip.